Hello and welcome to another Whiskey Review with me, the Whiskey Novice, and welcome from rarely sunny Northern Ireland. And it's from rarely sunny Northern Ireland that this week's whiskey comes for review number 226. We are here in Northern Ireland looking at Bushmills, a very old distillery in Northern Ireland, been around many, many years. I haven't reviewed a Bushmills for a long time, but this one, as you can probably see, isn't long for this. So before it pops itself off to Whiskey Valhalla, we'll give you my views on it. So Bushmills 16, matured ex-bourbon, ex-sherry, finished in port pipes, bottled at 40%, chill filtered, colour added. Bushmills, as we would, it's pretty much core range stuff. We pretty much expect that of it. But let's get the ifs, ands, and buts out of the way. You know, it would be nice, maybe bottle stronger, etc., etc. Let's just do this now. For years, we've all sort of said about, chill filter, 40%. It's the 40% thing with Bushmills. I'm gonna just put a pin in the 40% thing where Bushmills is concerned for this review, and let's just forget about it. Let's review this whiskey at 40% and see what we think of it. And just, as I say, forget about how it's presented, and let's just see what we think about it as it is presented. All right. So, ex-bourbon, ex-sherry, port pipes. Let's go. Immediately, lovely. It's actually fuller bodied, very full bodied. That there's a slightly gingery, honeyed, I'm going to say, Irish malt note. It's something that I've noticed from an awful lot of Irish malts. As I said, it's a slightly gingery, honeyed, malty, sweet malty note. Rich and fruity without being sweet, certainly without being over sweet. So yes, fruity sweet, but not over sweet. The Bushmills signature's there. It's almost being said as a joke now whenever I say, it smells like Bushmills. And the thing about it is that I think whenever I say it smells like Bushmills, sometimes it's taken as an insult. It is certainly not meant that way. It is meant as a compliment. And I'll get back to that moment if I remember later. But the Bushmills signature is there. What is that Bushmills signature? For me, personally, apples, citrus, and sometimes hints of like a synthetic banana. There's that slightly synthetic banana. No, not so much here, but sometimes. But that maturation is also very much on show. Loads of jam, loads of red fruit. Those port casks have definitely played their part here. Once again, I said I wouldn't mind it, but yes, it's 40%. Nose is well above its weight. It's certainly not thin on the notes and thin on the nose for 40%. It's I would actually go as far as saying it's beautifully inoffensive and unctuous. Ooh. So let's get into the palate, shall we? Sweet and sour arrival. And here's where this, to me, steps up, punches above its weight. I can't help but not mention the 40% thing, but doesn't taste like 40%, doesn't feel like 40%. Big, bold, slightly thin, yes, but coats incredibly well. So what if it's slightly thin? As I said, as long as it doesn't feel oily, it doesn't feel creamy. Just feels like a good solid malt. One sip alone, I haven't been back in from a second sip here. One sip alone, and that's coating, and I've just loads of flavour going on the whole time. Go back in. Those apples are there. That is, in my opinion, Bushmills spirit. The apples are there, the citrus is there, the red fruit is there. It's all there, even those honeyed notes, even those, slightly gingery notes. Take your time with this, as we generally do anyway. It does start to get a little hot. What starts out as a lovely round, slightly maybe even prickly heat, the flavors start to diminish a little, and the heat just starts to become a bit more of a thing. But it's not that off-putting. Finish is actually relatively long, and at the minute the heat sort of takes over a bit. Unfortunately, the fruit dies back a little and the heat takes over a little, but it's not, it's still not necessarily off-putting. You did see me putting water into that. It's a rare occasion that I will put water into a 40% whiskey. Anything ball at 40% ABV. Now, why? I don't know, because I like any sort of body. Well, certainly triple distilled whiskey. I've said it in the past. I generally don't like adding water to triple distilled whiskey. Let's quick bash through the science while the water's settling in this. This is triple distilled, right? Irish malt. Triple distilled, what I mean? Well, in triple distilling, you're making it stronger every time. This comes off their third still around the 83 to 84% mark ABV, right? That's generally what Bushmills distill to that strength. Well, if you're casking at 63.5%, which is the general rule of thumb, you're adding quite a bit of water to it before you put it into the cask. And then if you've matured it, married it, etc., over 16 years, you're adding quite a bit more water to it when it was disgorged to bring it down to 40%. So there's been quite a lot of water added to this through its life alone. Generally, I find then that in adding water to most triple distilled, generally Irish whiskies, they tend to not cope very well. They tend to drown a little. They don't tend to break up nicely. They just feel a bit. But the other thing to remember is that most blenders drop below 40% anyway when setting their flavors. So you're usually, as far as I know now, you're usually talking around 35% ABV that blenders are bringing their whiskey down to when they're setting their flavors. So 40% then already is technically above the bar as to what they're doing. I'm not making excuses for Bushmills here. Trust me, I'm not. But I'm still just trying to look beyond that 40% thing. Right, okay, back in, water settled. That gingery note has stepped up a bit. Those brighter gingery honey notes that I was talking about earlier are even brighter and honeyed and more loud now. But there's loads, even that drop of water. This is the first time in a long time that I've had an Irish whiskey that can cope with water, and it was actually a fair bit of water I put into that there. It wasn't just a drop. It was a good bit. It was a good half a teaspoonful. Loads of fruit. And even now you could break it even more so into its individual parts because all the fruit's at play. But really well balanced, but you can very easily say apple. Yes, I could say apple very happily. Citrus, yes. Red fruit, yes. And I know whenever we say red fruit, it's a sort of broad brush there, but the bourbon, the Oloroso were on show, and the port casks, all laid out, but all very well balanced at the same time. I've always been scared to add water to things like this, but it does actually improve this, because very much so. The heat that I was talking about earlier on, and it can be difficult to describe a hot whiskey sometimes. To me, what a hot whiskey is where the flavours basically just sort of stopped hanging around and heat takes over instead. And generally you can give that heat a name. So you could be talking, is it chili? Is it even a lime heat? Is it peppery? Is it something? Sometimes it's just heat. It's just hot. There's no flavour left at all. This, with the drop of water, has calmed down. The flavour is really, really bursting out of this now, and the heat has calmed down. It's gentle, but it's rich. So the port pipes, the Oloroso casks, are playing their part. They're bringing that richness up. This is no airy fairy, light on its feet, soft. Even I don't want to say space ID, but I mean that, you know, it's the word I'm searching for. But even your Irish blends, your general sort of generic sort of grain heavy Irish blends, definitely not that by any means. There's loads of flavour going on in this. Loads of body. The finish probably even longer. The finish better because the heat has been taken out of the finish and it's now about flavour again. This is really nice. This is Bushmills playing nice. This is Bushmills doing well. I could sort of start now and come up with my complaints about Bushmills, and Lord knows I do have them. But I have complaints about almost every distillery. I'm a consumer. I pay for whiskey. I want them to make good stuff. At the end of the day, I put my faith in Bushmills to produce a good whiskey. And in this case, they've done that. Very, very, very much so done that. The Bushmills 16, a good one. Will I replace it? Yes, I would replace this. Usually around the sort of 80 to 90 pounds mark. Yes, it's dear enough. It is. You know, there's people will not pay that for a 40% whiskey, no matter how good it is. And I could sort of understand that. The thing about it is, remembering, given current times and given that, yes, money's tight, but it's still a 16-year-old whiskey and they creep up in price. So that's just the way it is. So yes, I like it. Yes, I would replace it. Well done, Bushmills. I'm going to move on and leave that there. So what would I suggest to you as an alternative? I'm just going to be a bit cheeky about it. I'm going to up the numbers and say, if you like the 16, you gotta try the 21. I don't want to say too much about the Bushmills 21. Why? Well, because if you come back for my next review, I'm going to review the Bushmills 21. That's why. This review number 226, review number 227 will be the Bushmills 21. But if Bushmills 20 or Bushmills 16 was your thing, then you should go up the numbers. I know it's only a 5-year difference between the two of them, and this 21-year-old is over twice the price of the 16-year-old. Yeah, it's a shocker. I would agree with you totally. But who am I? So as I said, I don't want to say too much about the 21-year-old just yet. Just to say that if the 16 ticked your boxes, you really should try the 21-year-old. I'll not say much more than that. So that's that done. It's nice to get back to Bushmills. They do make a bloody good spirit. They really do. I've said it before. I will say it again. They make one of the best, if not on a given day, the best new make spirit in Ireland. Sometimes they can handle it a little better in my opinion, but this is a case where it's been done well. Well done, Bushmills, definitely. 16, beautiful. Thank you for joining me. Thank you very, very much to my patrons. Should anybody wish to join that group, the details are in the video description below. I will be back the next time, not with something different. I've already told you what I'll be back with next time. I hope you can join me then. Until then, look after yourselves. Here's to your good health. Cheers. Hey, thanks for watching my video. Please click and subscribe to be notified of further content.